Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Addresses Masonic from Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Addresses Masonic. Dr. Oliver, speaking of the Masonic discourses, which began to be published soon after the reorganization of Masonry in the commencement of the 18th century, and which he thinks were instigated by the attacks made on the order to which they were intended to be replies, says, "Charges and addresses were therefore delivered by brethren in authority on the fundamental principles of the order, and they were printed to show that its morality was sound, and not in the slightest degree repugnant to the precepts of our most holy religion. These were of sufficient merit to ensure a wide circulation among the fraternity, from whence they spread into the world at large, and proved decisive in fixing the credit of the institution for solemnities of character and a taste for serious and profitable investigation. There can be no doubt that these addresses, periodically delivered and widely published, have continued to exert an excellent effect in behalf of the institution, by explaining and defending the principles on which it is founded. The first Masonic address of which we have any notice was delivered on the 24th of June, 1721, before the Grand Lodge of England by the celebrated John Theophilus de Zagulga, LLD and FRS. The Book of Constitutions, edition 1738, page 131, under that date, says that Brother de Zagulga made an eloquent oration about Masons and Masonry. Dr. Oliver, in Revelations of a Square, page 22, states that this address was issued in a printed form, but no copy of it now remains. At least it has escaped the researches of the most diligent Masonic biographers. On the 20th of May, 1725, Martin Folks, then Deputy Grand Master, delivered an address before the Grand Lodge of England, which is cited in the Freemason's Pocket Companion for 1759, but no entire copy of the address is in extant. The third Masonic address of which we have any knowledge is one entitled, "A Speech Delivered to the Worshipful and Ancient Society of Free and Accepted Masons at the Grand Lodge, held at Merchants' Hall in the city of York on St. John's Day, December 27th, 1726, the Right Worshipful Charles Bathurst, Esquire, Grand Master, by the Junior Grand Warden, York, printed by Thomas Gent, for the benefit of the Lodge, the author Francis Drake, M.D., F.R.S., who was appointed Junior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of all England at York on December 27, 1725. C. Drake Francis." The first edition of the speech bears no date, but it was probably issued in 1727, and it was again published at London in 1729. And a second London edition was published in 1734, which has been reprinted in Huon's Masonic Sketches and Reprints, American edition, page 106. This is therefore the earliest Masonic address to which we have access. It contains a brief sketch of the history of Masonry, written as Masonic history was then written. It is, however, remarkable for advancing the claim of the Grand Lodge of York to the superiority over that of London, and for containing a very early reference to the 3 degrees of craft masonry. The fourth Masonic address of whose existence we have any knowledge is "A Speech Delivered to the Worshipful Society of Free and Accepted Masons at a Lodge, held at the Carpenter's Arms in Silver Street, Golden Square, the 31st of December, 1728, by the Right and Worshipful Edwin Oakley, Architect, M.M., late Provincial Senior Grand Warden, in Carmarthen, South Wales. This speech was reprinted by Cole in his Ancient Constitutions at London in 1731. America has the honor of presenting the next attempt at Masonic oratory. The fifth address and the first American, which is extant, is one delivered in Boston, Massachusetts, on June 24th, 1734. It is entitled, "A Dissertation Upon Masonry, delivered to a lodge in America, June 24th, 1734. It was discovered by Brother C.W. Moore in the archives of the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts and published by him in his magazine in 1849. This address is well written and of a symbolic character, as the author allegorizes the lodge as a type of heaven." And sixthly, we have an address made to the body of free and accepted Masons assembled at the quarterly communication held near Temple Bar, December 11, 1735, by Martin Clare, Junior Grand Warden. Martin Clare was distinguished in his times as a Mason, and his address, which Dr. Oliver has inserted in his Golden Remains, has been considered of value enough to be translated into the French and German languages. Next, on March 21st, 1737, the Chevalier Ramsay delivered an oration before the Grand Lodge of France, in which he attributed the origin of Freemasonry to the Crusaders and traced an imaginary history of its course through Scotland and England into France, which was to become the center of the Reformed Order. The best report of this speech is to be found seen here, and an English version of it is given in Gould's History of Freemasonry. See Ramsay. After this period, Masonic addresses rapidly multiplied, so that it would be impossible to record their titles or even the names of their authors. What Marshall says of his own epigrams, that some were good, some bad, and a great many middling, made with equal propriety and justice. But said of Masonic addresses, of the thousands that have been delivered, many have been worth neither printing nor preserving. One thing, however, is to be remarked, that within a few years the literary character of these productions has greatly improved. Formerly a Masonic address on some festal occasion of the order was little more than a homily on brotherly love or some other Masonic virtue. Often the orator was a clergyman selected by the lodge on account of his moral character or his professional ability. These clergymen were frequently among the youngest members of the lodge, and men who had no opportunity to study the esoteric construction of Masonry. In such cases, we find that the addresses were generally neither more nor less than sermons under another name. They contain excellent general axioms of conduct, and sometimes encomiums of the laudable design of our institution, but we look in the vain in them for any ideas which refer to the history or the occult philosophy of Masonry. They accept the definition that Freemasonry is a science of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols, only in part. They expatiate on the science of morality, but they say nothing of the symbols or the allegories. But, as has been already said, there has been an evident improvement within a few years, in America especially, for the reform has not equally extended to England. Many of the addresses now delivered are of a higher order of Masonic literature. The subjects of Masonic history, of the origin of the institution, of its gradual development from an operative art to a speculative science, of its symbols and of its peculiar features which distinguish it from all other associations, have been ably discussed in many recent Masonic addresses, and thus have the efforts to entertain an audience for an hour become not only the means of interesting instruction to the hearers, but also valuable contributions to the literature of Freemasonry. It is in this way that Masonic addresses should be written. All platitudes and old truisms should be avoided. Sermonizing, which is good in its place, is out of place here. No one should undertake to deliver a Masonic address unless he knows something of the subject on which he is about to speak, and unless he is capable of saying what will make every Mason who hears him a wiser as well as a better man, or at least what will afford him the opportunity of becoming so. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.